Well, today is the 21st of July, and it seemed like a good time to make a walkthrough of our gardens. As we start out here, we have a lot of pollinators, pollination plants that bring in the pollinators, and they help our vegetable gardens tremendously. So we'll start with a few pictures of some of those pollination plants. There you have some zinnias and some cosmos and some oregano blooming. Over here we have some petunias and a butterfly bush. The butterfly bush is absolutely beautiful and brings in a lot of butterflies. And then we move over to the vegetable gardens. These are our blue lake bush beans, and they are just going wild this year and producing beans. We've picked twice, and there's another batch to be picked on here. I will see if I can get an up-close picture. There you can see some of the beans hanging on here. There are a lot of beans hanging on these bushes, and they'll be picked this evening again for the third time. In the bed adjacent to that, we have the pepper plants. On the end is some bell peppers, and you can see there's quite a few bell peppers in here. Each plant has about 10 or 12 peppers on it. Next in line is some banana peppers, and there's a lot of those in here. As you can see, they're also ready to be picked, and they'll probably be picked for dinner this evening. Next to those are the jalapenos, and they are also full of peppers, and they're ready to be picked. So we have a lot of peppers this year. At the end of the bed here, we have some romaine lettuce that is growing and needs to be picked again. And adjacent to the romaine lettuce is some spinach, which is doing well considering the heat that we've had. We've been over 90 degrees now for 2 weeks, and it's starting to take its toll. But this bed has worked well with the peppers on one end and the lettuce and spinach on the other end. In this bed over here, we have some young zucchini plants. These were just transplanted a week ago and from seed, and they are starting to go very well. Here on the end is what's known as Mammoth Basil, and each leaf on that Mammoth Basil is about the size of a lettuce leaf, and they are growing wild. These plants are about 2 weeks old, and they're getting started. Adjacent to that, we have some Swiss chard, which is ready to be picked again, and we have some Dinosaur Kale or Lacinato Kale. And we have 6 plants of kale and 6 plants of Swiss chard here, which is plenty for us. Over here we have rhubarb plants, which are growing in fire rings, and these plants have really suffered with this heat. Some of them not doing well at all, and will probably be replaced this year. On the end of this bed, we have our tomato cages, and there's 4 tomato cages which are made out of cattle panels. On this end is golden Jubilee tomato, and you can see there's a lot of tomatoes forming in this bush, and there won't be long they'll start to change colors. There's a big one up underneath it here. There's another one here. These 2 plants on the end are golden Jubilees. The plant in the middle, the third one over, is Black Beauty, and you can see they're starting to change color and developing into the black tomatoes that they will be. As that black moves down from top towards bottom, then they will be ripe and ready to pick. Next to that, we have the Sun Gold tomato, of which there's a lot of tomatoes in there. These were picked yesterday, and they're picked every day, but there's some more ready to be picked. So, all in all, the vegetable gardens are all doing very well in spite of this heat. Again, the beans have to be picked. Every time I walk by them, I see more beans hanging on them that have to be picked. So that's this evening's job. Just gives you a good overview of the raised garden beds that's up by the house, the closest ones. All of these have drip irrigation in them, so they do keep watered in this hot weather that we have. So now we'll move out to the north garden beds. On the other side of that poor pear tree that is drooping over from all the weight of the pears in it, we will walk out to the garden and see what's out there. This is our composting area. There's one compost bin here. Next week I'll have 2 more built and adjacent to that. And then I have 2 compost tumblers. Those are JK 270s. They're beautiful composters. There we have autumn clematis, which will soon be blooming. And now you see the north beds. There are 2 gooseberry plants here, which I had to fence in. The raccoons kept eating all of my gooseberries, and I had to fence them in. This bed is mostly empty at the present time. A few carrots remain in it, and there are 2 young cucumber plants which have been transplanted from seeds that I started indoors, and they're just now getting started growing, but soon they will grow up this trellis arbor that we have here. On the end of the bed is spring onions or green onions, which have taken a beating from a mini tornado that we had, and they have to be pulled out and used up. In the adjacent bed, we have carrots growing, and these are ready to harvest. They're big enough now to start harvesting and taking in, and then we'll plant some fall crops in here. On the end of this bed is some leeks, and we've been eating those. They're growing very well. This is our back to Eden garden here, and planted here close to the beds are the winter squash. This is a cushaw squash, and next to it is a red curry squash, and next to that is a butternut squash and another butternut squash. And you'll notice I had to put guards around these to stop the rabbits from eating them off. But these squash will soon fill this entire back to Eden bed, these wood chips, with squash plants. This corner of the back to Eden garden is all comfrey. This is comfrey that has not been yet cut and used. Along this fence here, I cut the comfrey a week ago and used it to mulch the zucchini squash, and it's starting to grow back, but it'll be another couple weeks for it to be up, and these are just starting to bloom over here. But comfrey is one of our most important perennial plants that we have. I'll give a brief view of the pear tree to show you why it's drooping over so much. It is absolutely loaded with pears. They didn't get thinned out, and this tree didn't get pruned this spring like it should have. So these pears are just hanging on here in clusters, and it's going to be real interesting to see what the harvest will be this year. As we leave the pear tree, we'll walk back up towards the house. There's some button bush, which the butterfly have loved when they were in bloom. They're finished blooming now, and you can see the garden beds as they're coming closer into view, and you can see the 8-foot high tomato plant, and that one plant, that's the sun gold tomatoes, and the peppers and the tomatoes, or peppers and green beans, are hanging over the edge of the beds. They're getting so big. So that concludes the garden tour for July of 2022.